I was never really a runner. The way I see running is a gift, especially when you have stage 4 cancer. I'm Anne. I'm running the Boston Marathon, presented by Bank of America. I run for Dana-Farber Cancer Institute to give people like me a chance to thrive in life, even with cancer.
Join Bank of America in helping Anne's cause. Give if you can at BofA.com/supportAnne. What would you like the power to do? References to charitable organizations is not an endorsement by Bank of America Corporation. Copyright 2025.
Hey, I'm Greer. Welcome to the Unfinished Idea podcast, a space for you to expand your understanding about the neurodiverse world, which is all around us. Whether you're a parent, a friend, a teacher, or a neighbor, everyone is welcome to join us as we help bring awareness and better understanding about those who are neurodivergent and families who are raising children with special needs. I'm a mom to 2 boys and 2 dogs, and together with my husband, raising a child with additional needs. I often feel lonely and overwhelmed in my daily experience because life looks different for us. This podcast will share practical help, tips, and insights into the difficulties, joys, and differences of the neurodiverse world. So let's start the conversation. Today's conversation is such an important reminder that all the hard days don't last forever. I sit down with Brandy to talk about parenting a neurodivergent child into adulthood, the lessons she's learned along the way, and the things she might have done differently if she could go back. Brandy's son is about to graduate from college or university, and they're preparing for the next big transition. We reflect on how far the conversation around neurodiversity has come in the last 10 to 15 years, and the work that still needs to be done. We also talk about the different transition neurodivergent kids go through from school to adulthood and what really helps them thrive along the way. She offers so much wisdom, especially when it comes to helping our kids learn to advocate for themselves as they grow older. This conversation left me feeling hopeful and reassured, like we've got this and it's all gonna be okay. Hey, before we jump into today's episode, I have put together a podcast listener survey that I would love for you to fill out. This survey is just here to help me craft the show better, make sure I'm talking about topics you want to hear, and overall serve you and your families. By filling out the survey, you will be automatically entered into a draw where you can win some amazing fun prizes like merch from the podcast that is not yet public, as well as some of my favorite things and even a call with me. So go down to the show notes and click on that link that's called Podcast Survey. And if you don't mind, just filling it in. Now let's jump in. So Brandy, you are joining because you have a kind of an adult son who is neurodivergent and kind of talking about what it's like having kind of raised him. I'm sure you're probably still raising him to an extent, but kind of first let's talk about just how different is the neurodivergent world compared to when your son was younger.
I think the biggest difference is just the awareness of just like everyday life and everyday people that you run into. There's much more of an awareness and acceptance of the neurodivergent community. I mean, I don't really even think that we called it neurodivergent back when he was originally diagnosed. I mean, he was specifically diagnosed with sensory processing disorder. And we talked a little bit about it being an autism spectrum disorder at the time. But when I would tell people, well, he has SPD, they'd kind of look at me like I was an alien. And then even when I said sensory processing disorder, it was still kind of like, whatever. So I think that it definitely has helped to just be like, well, he's neurodivergent. That seems to have much more of a resonance with people. And obviously, I think that probably is a much easier way to define because it's such an umbrella and it is such a spectrum. And, they're so unique, but that neurodivergent umbrella, I think, also shares a lot of similar qualities. And it definitely seems to make it a lot easier to kind of explain to people. And there seems to be a much greater awareness and truly acceptance of understanding what that means than there was when he was diagnosed back in 2006. So I think that's really been the biggest change is just that more of awareness and acceptance.
And just for those who may not know, can you just kind of tell us what is sensory processing disorder?
I guess the easiest way to describe it is that there is somewhat of a miscommunication between all of the parts of the body that take in sensations from the environment through, sight, through sound, through touch, And then in a neurotypical brain, all of those body parts are gathering sensory information from the world and then relaying that information to the brain. And in a neurodivergent brain, or a brain that has sensory processing disorder, the way that it was easiest, I guess, described to us is that the pathways just don't get set down quite as smoothly. So it's almost like a SPD brain. When it sends those signals to the brain, it's like you're on an old bumpy country road versus a smooth highway. And so the information is just not quite relayed in the most precise, efficient, smooth kind of pathway. And so that kind of, creates some issues along the way. You're bumpier, and there's more potholes and there's more curves than if it was that smooth highway transmission.
Yeah, that's a really good example to use. And yeah, I think I would say life is a little bit more bumpier. And so that's a really good, kind of imagination. I can really picture that, and kind of experiences that I've kind of seen my son go through is like, yeah, that's really true.
Yeah. I mean, for like a really specific example, like we really had to teach Strayer when he was younger what pain was, because he would barely get scratched or barely bump into anything. And he would be screaming like at the top of his lungs. And for whatever reason, his brain got the signal that he was really hurt. And so we had to kind of teach him physical things like look at where your arm is. Do you see blood? Do you see a bruise? Do you see a cut? Do you see a scratch? And kind of teach him like, okay, if you don't see any of those things, if you don't see like, the arm is broken and now it's at a different angle, if we had to kind of teach him different things like that to look, and then to kind of help himself take a breath and then recalibrate and say, is, what I'm screaming at, is that the same thing as what I'm looking at? And if those aren't matching, then maybe my reaction isn't quite what it needs to be. And obviously that comes along with a lot of training and a lot of time. A 3-year-old doesn't necessarily understand it. But if you continue to have that same conversation for 3 years, a 6-year-old is much easier to be like, oh, I'm not bleeding. It probably doesn't hurt as bad as in my head that I'm telling myself it does right now. So that's just kind of a concrete example of some of the ways that we kind of taught him that the message that your brain got may not be exactly what's happening to your actual body in this moment right now.
As you kind of were talking about when he was younger, what kind of things do you look back at now and think, I wish I knew that, or I wish someone had said to me this or something, kind of looking back, what would you say?
Oh man, so many things. I mean, there were so many times where I feel like where my job probably was to try to de-escalate the situation. And I just early on didn't have the awareness of the tools to realize that. And I know that I made a lot of mistakes in what I did that just escalated the situation. So I wish that I would have had a better understanding of when he kind of was losing it, to try to just get him to a safe, quiet space and basically just say, it's okay, you can lose it for a little while. And then mommy will come back and check on you in a few minutes and see, if you're at a better place, instead of trying to tell him to stop it. Stop crying, if you don't stop crying, whatever, because none of that was helpful. And looking back now, I realize like none of that was helpful. So I wish I would have had more tools myself to just realize that when he's already lost it, there's really nothing that I can do to gain that back other than just give him some time and some space, and to just kind of let him know like, hey, it's okay. You can lose it for a little bit and then I'll come back and check on you. So yeah, I think that's the biggest, I guess, regret, that I wish I just would have had more tools and more awareness myself to allow him to have that time and that space instead of escalating it like I feel like I did in a lot of situations.
Yeah, like you mentioned, I feel like even in the last 3 years, as we've kind of been on this journey, there's a lot more tools out there. And so I can imagine for you, that was almost 20 years ago, like kind of that journey for you having way less tools and way less knowledge. And so, yeah, I'm grateful for people who have put the time in to learn and to give away their knowledge and their resources.
Yeah. And I feel like there are a lot of times why I think probably what I was dealing with was a sense of judgment, like that when he was having that meltdown, that it was looked upon, not just him as being a bad kid, but me being a bad mom, that I wasn't able to control him in that moment. And I do think that's gotten better. I mean, I know I've been out multiple times now, when a kiddo's having a meltdown or whatever. And I mean, I have no idea if it is neurodivergent or neurotypical either way, but I, feel like there's a lot more of, support, like looking at the mom and being like, it'll get better, don't worry about it, and not that instant judgment of why can't you control your child? And I think that's come a long way. I definitely feel like I felt a lot of pressure and a lot of judgment when my kid wasn't behaving in the way that he should have been behaving. So I do think that has definitely gotten better.
Yeah, I will say in our experience, it is slightly generational, I'll be honest. So kind of an older generation look and go, why can't you control your kid? But a lot of people, definitely my age, like kind of I would say, give that look of like, do you need help? Or you're doing a good job? Or, just kind of definitely, there's a little bit of a gap, but it's, I think, generational, and it's definitely less than what it was, definitely, I think.
Yeah.
So your son is now at college, is that right? Is he?
He is. He just finished his first semester of his junior year. He'll actually graduate early. So he's graduating in December of this year. So he'll graduate almost a year early. And he's 21. So he's technically full-blown adult.
So you have survived.
We have survived this stage yet.
What would you want to tell the mom who's in the trenches, like me, with young kids, not sure if she's going to get it there?
For sure. Oh man, the thing that I hated the most was when somebody would be like, the days are long, but the years are short. But man, it's so, so true. And in those days that are so long, just find the moments, even if it's only 5 minutes, nothing catastrophic. If they're in a safe space, nothing catastrophic is going to happen if you take 5 minutes to walk outside and just gain your composure, to take a deep breath, to do whatever you need in the moment. That I wish I would have done a little bit more of that self-care for myself. It always goes back to the analogy when you're flying, like you got to put the breathing mask on yourself first, the oxygen mask on yourself so that you can provide that. And it really is so true. So whatever that looks like, hopefully you have a supportive spouse that can help you, or supportive parents, or supportive community, that you can reach out and say, I need help. I need a couple of hours. I need a break or whatever, because it is so challenging on certain days, and we really can't do it alone. So wherever you can find that village and that support, I definitely encourage you to reach out and be really super proactive about making sure that you have a support system around yourself as well.
Like you said, so the day we're recording this has not been a great day in our house. And there was a moment where fresh air I read an article a couple months ago that was saying how fresh air actually can really reset the body. And it was a very interesting article. And so today my kids were safe. They were fine. I literally stepped outside to our back garden, so they could have followed me, but they didn't. And just had 5 minutes, just breathe, like took in some really big, deep breaths of fresh air, and was like, okay, I can do this. I actually also set a timer of like, okay, 20 more minutes and then we'll start bedtime routine. Just that it was just a moment of reset. And it was definitely needed. And I can definitely say, like you said, if they're in a safe place, which I'm sure they are, just go out for 5 minutes. It's actually not that bad.
No. Yes.
I know it sounds weird to say, but there was a point in my time, like my life, where I thought, I can't leave them for 5 minutes. That's horrible. And so, that's a good encouragement and a reminder that it's important to think of yourself as well. So he is now an adult. How has your relationship changed from kind of him needing you to, I don't know, maybe he still does need you, but kind of changed into adulthood?
Sure. Yeah, I think that question right there has been the hardest, other than the initial period of him being diagnosed. I think trying to find that balance right now in his life in terms of how much support does he still need, and where is that balance between allowing him to be an adult, make his own decisions, but also recognize the amount or the level of support that he still needs. I know for him, and I would assume it's the same for quite a few neurodivergent kids, is that transitions are the hardest, I guess, space for them to kind of overcome. And I'll be honest, I think that my husband and I don't know if we just didn't recognize, I don't know. We kind of look back and we're like, what were we thinking? I think we were really trying to instill and really try to show him that we had so much faith in him and we were so proud of how much he had overcome and that, he graduated from a high school with an associate's degree as well. And just like, how challenging that was and, how far he had come and how much he had done. And we were so proud of him and, felt so confident in his abilities. And I think we were trying to show that to him in a way like, you can do this, we know you can do this. And looking back, I just wish that we would have put some layers of bubble wrap around him before we sent him off to college and then slowly unwrapped it instead of kind of being like, we know you can do this, because I think he felt a sense of, I'm kind of not doing this. I'm kind of floundering, but I should be doing this. So I don't want to ask for help. I don't want to reach out. And kind of by the time we figured out that he was really struggling, it had gotten pretty bad his freshman year. It was that transition period was not a great time. And when he came home after his freshman year, before he went back for his sophomore year, we really had to have some hard conversations in terms of, is this the right time? Do you need to take a gap year? Are you really ready for this? Or do you need a little bit more time to just kind of mature or whatever? So we actually did a lot of family counseling that summer and kind of trying to kind of figure out. One of the things that we did when he was younger that I think was very helpful is, as soon as we got the diagnosis, we kind of just started sharing that with him at age appropriate levels and just constantly talked about, SPD and what that meant. And the analogy we used a lot is that he was going to need to build a toolbox that he carried around with him forever. And that in any given scenario, if he found it challenging or whatever, he needed to reach into that toolbox and figure out what the appropriate tool or strategy was for that given situation. It really helped because one of the shows that he loved at that time was Handy Manny. I don't even know if they have it anymore, but it was a little PBS show and he loved Handy Manny and he loved tools and stuff. So we would always just kind of talk about, which tool do you think Handy Manny would use in this situation and stuff. And I wish that we would have done a better job of being like proactive of saying, what kind of tools do you think that you're going to need in this situation and in this situation? And so over that summer in between his freshman and sophomore year, we really talked a lot about what tools he thought were going to be needed to be successful his sophomore year. He also changed his major, and I think that ended up being a huge part of his success. But we kind of talked about that too. Like, that's a tool, like learning how to pivot as an adult. And especially as a neurodivergent adult, like sometimes the tool is that you just have to pivot. Like, this just is not going to work for you. And recognizing that and not trying to force it. And if you are in a situation where you have a chance to make a change or to pivot, then just recognizing that and pivoting. That made all the difference in the world. He went back in his sophomore year. It was fantastic. His junior year was even better. And he really is thriving. After his freshman year, he made straight A's in college and stuff. I mean, it was a complete turnaround. But man, that first year was really rough for all of us. And I just wish we would have done a better job as a family of recognizing that was going to be a super tough challenge or super tough transition. You're transitioning from high school to college academics. You're transitioning from living at a home that you're really used to living in a brand new place without your family support, with every single aspect of their lives is transitioning all at once. And I wish we would have done a better job of kind of recognizing what a major transition that was going to be and that it was going to require more support. My husband and I have already talked about how when he transitions from college to adult, having a job and living in an apartment and stuff, that we were putting all kind of bubble wrap on him this time. And then we will slowly take it off because we have full confidence he'll get there. But we don't want him to be scarred in the process. So we'd much rather just offer an enormous amount of support and him tell us too much, back off. And then we'll listen, but we would rather be in that situation. So it was a good learning experience, but that's the thing about being a parent. I think it doesn't matter what age they're at. You still have things to learn as a parent, and it changes with every stage. So it's like just relearning things all over again.
Hey friends, I'm Annie F. Downs, author, speaker, podcaster, and part of the That Sounds Fun network. And I'm a big fan of seeing God move in our everyday lives. Can we talk for a second about what it really means to be a person of faith? It's waking up every day and choosing to trust him, even when life feels uncertain. It's standing firm in truth, walking in grace, and knowing that God is always with us. But I know staying rooted in faith is not always easy. At least it isn't for me. And that's why I love Glorify, the #1 Christian devotional app designed to help you start, grow, and strengthen your relationship with God every single day. One of the things I love about Glorify is the amount of options available to me through the app every day. Not only does it help me kick off my time with God with their daily devotional, but there's a song of the day to listen to and a community of other users available to engage with. It's really cool. With Glorify, you can begin your morning in scripture, reflect with the daily devotional, and end the day with the daily walk with God, this immersive experience that quiets your heart and refocuses your spirit. It's one of my favorite hacks, something simple but powerful that keeps you anchored when life gets busy. Join me and over 20 million believers who have found encouragement through Glorify. Download the app today at glorify-app.com/podcast, and let's keep walking in faith together. Again, that's glorify-app.com/podcast.
To the salon owners, the spa experts, the med spa mavens, those who make every cut, every massage, every facial feel like a small miracle. At Boulevard, they see you. That's why they built the first and only client experience platform that combines online scheduling, marketing, messaging, and payments, and works as beautifully as you do. See for yourself at joinblvd.com/Spotify. Boulevard, software for self-care businesses.
Yeah, I remember my mom saying once, even for her, so she has 4 kids, and that transition from your child being a child to your child being an adult for all 4 of her kids was not hard in the sense of like arguments or anything, but just for her, like that idea of, how much support do I give? And we're all 4 very different individuals. So, we all needed different things. And I moved to another country when I was 21. So again, it's that like, I'm in a whole different country, let alone just off to uni. So I can imagine having a neurodivergent child then means that support. You're just not even sure what you need. So
right.
Yeah. And that's a good, I don't know, as you were talking, I thought, I think I want to be that parent who is too much, then not enough, if that makes sense. And like you said, kind of, you can pull back a lot easier than having to like implement and put into place structure or support. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think for Strayer, I would not have recommended like doing that for him all the time. I mean, I think there were times where he needed to feel a little bit of a challenge and be pushed, but definitely in those bigger transition periods, moving to a new school, moving to a new house, moving obviously from high school to college, but anything that is going to be a pretty major transition for him, that has always been the biggest challenge. Yeah. I mean, honestly, that's how he was first diagnosed, was because he would literally have a meltdown to the point where he was making himself throw up in preschool when they like would move from one activity center to another, or when he would move from, it was time to go play outside and then it's time to come back inside. It was just those, for him at that point, it was those smaller transitions. Those were always the challenging times. And then as they get bigger, the small transitions aren't as big, but there are still major transitions they go through. And for sure, for those times, I think we've recognized he's just always going to need a little bit more support during those times. And that to us as parents, it's like, well, that's our job. So
that's really good. For parents who have kids in high school who are in England, it's a slightly different format. There's a lot more freedom when they're in high school. But what would you say, kind of how could they support their kids in this kind of middle? I always think high school, looking back, is like a middle stage of you're becoming more of an adult and thinking for yourself and having freedom to take certain classes or not, but you're not quite university, college age where you are a full adult.
Yeah.
So kind of what tips or ideas could you give?
Yeah, this is probably a tough question for me to answer because he actually was in a very unique high school situation. He went to an early college prep high school. And I would say, I don't think they did this on purpose, but I would say probably 85% of those kids were neurodivergent at the school. I mean, they just were all a little bit quirky, all real nerdy and a little bit quirky. And so it was the ideal environment because they were all kind of the same. And also they had a very structured, like everybody kind of took the same classes because they needed that associate's degree at the end. So they all kind of had to be on the same track. So that probably isn't the best. I'm probably not the best person to ask that just because of his really unique situation. He also talks about the fact that, because I asked him, we kind of took it year by year with him, and we actually he was not on medication at all throughout his K through 12. Now that he's gotten in college, he made the decision that he definitely thought that it would be a helpful tool to add to his toolbox then. And I asked him, like, because we would have conversations with him, like, do you think this would be helpful? And I said, in high school, do you feel like you were stressed out and we just didn't know and we missed it? Do you feel like that would be helpful? And he even said, no, he's like, I don't think I really needed it in high school. He said, the structure of our curriculum, and he said, we did so much group work that the group held me accountable. And I felt the pressure from the group, like to make sure that I was always holding up my end of the bargain. He said, when I went to college, he said, I did not put as much pressure or accountability on myself as an individual. He was like, I know that's awful to say. He was like, but I was much more willing to let myself down than I was willing to let my group down. And he was like, so that's when he said, I felt like the ADHD and the motivation factor that goes along with that was much more of a struggle. And the meds really helped in that scenario. So, I mean, that's the other thing I think with him is that we kind of just took it year by year. I mean, we just kind of said, we'll see what works this year. And then we'll look at it again next year. And we were also really fortunate with all the teachers that we went through his K through 12. We just got really lucky. They all recognized early on that he was a super bright student and that when there were classroom issues that they were not behavior related, that they were neurodivergent related. And they were just really great with just redirecting him in a way that they felt like didn't disrupt them, didn't disrupt the class, but it didn't need to be like this huge major deal. And they really were fantastic about working with him in those scenarios. So I just think we got real lucky. I think I think you really have to sometimes fight for that if it's not readily available. If you don't have an academic setting that does that, a school, a teacher or whatever, then I think you really have to fight for your student to make sure that they have what they need to be academically successful. I definitely count ourselves, just so fortunate that we really didn't have to fight much. We just got really lucky in terms of the teachers that he had. And then we were super fortunate that our school district had that early prep college, that high school, that was just a perfect fit for him.
Yeah, that's a really good point about taking it year by year. I know we kind of did that last year. We said last year, so he's in England, they start school at 4. So 4 to 5. He went to school. It was very difficult. We said, okay, we'll see how we didn't even say a year. We said, we'll see how he gets on till Christmas and before we make a decision, not a decision, but make a step towards a decision or, and he did so well that we were like, okay, we'll keep going. Like, we'll just keep going on this path. Yeah. And even now we're kind of like, now we're kind of the end of year. Like, okay, well, let's see how he does till the end of the year. And then take that on. And that's, I think for us, that's given us freedom and kind of not putting pressure on us as parents. Like if he doesn't do this, he fails, and then putting pressure on him to do these things or not. And that's a good reminder, I think, as well. Like, it's okay to do that. It's okay to take it year by year or term by term or, whatever your child needs, that's okay.
Yeah, in that season, because they're growing and maturing and responding to different things at different rates. And as they get older, they're able to offer you a lot more feedback. Obviously now when he started meds, like he completely manages that with his physician completely on his own. And he will say, I'm also a pharmacist, so he will call and say, hey, I'm thinking about this and talking to my doctor about this and this. What do you think? And I'll be like, I mean, from a pharmaceutical standpoint, that's fine. But you are the only one that knows how it feels in your body and what. So as they get older, they can manage that a lot better and know exactly, what helps, what doesn't help, how it's working, and stuff. And so that part of it does get easier too, because they really can recognize and take a little bit more ownership of what's helpful, what's not helpful, what they need in different given scenarios.
Yeah, I don't know if encouraged was the right word, but just really, I don't know what the word is, but that you talked about how you've brought this into the conversation from the start with your son and letting him have that. And I think it's very easy. I know myself, like easy to not because you don't want to, but it's just like, I need to make that decision or I need to do that, and again, thinking like he's 5, like my son's 5, he's not going to know, but actually having him be part of every step, maybe not making the final decision, but having him be a part of it gives him that ownership. So when he, when he is older, it's not new, if that, it's not a new thing. This is something that it's always been part of his life and always there. And then, I'm just thinking like, oh, okay. I feel like there's hope to kind of own it and manage it. And I'm not having to be in his dorm room, advocating for him.
I hear that. And I can feel that so much. I can remember the day when he got diagnosed and thinking like, what does this mean? Like, does this mean he'll live with us forever? Those were the immediate thoughts I had. Does this mean he'll never leave? He'll never be able to function as an adult completely on his own, and if that's the case, then that's the case. But it was kind of like just mentally trying to prepare yourself. Like this wasn't exactly the plan that I had created in my head. But man, I think you'll be shocked at how resilient they are and how they will just completely amaze and surprise you. And you'll look back and you will think, wow, they have come so far, and the things that they're able to accomplish with those different levels of support. And I think one of the things for telling him at an early age is that we really wanted him to understand that this was just a part of who he was and that it wasn't anything he needed to be ashamed of, but he did need to recognize this would be him forever. And so that it was important for him to learn how to navigate life with being neurodivergent, and that he was going to need a toolbox. And, we really tried to encourage it to be like, this cannot be used as a crutch. Like you are fully capable of being successful, of doing anything that anybody else can do, but there may be more challenges. And so you are going to have to be more aware that you have a toolbox, that you need to use those tools. And I do think that language really helped him, to just recognize and to say in any given situation. We really talked to him about advocating for himself with teachers and stuff and saying, I don't think I think he still, he probably uses the word neurodivergent now as he's a little bit older, but for a long time, he would say, I'm on the spectrum. That's kind of the language that he would use a lot. And he would just tell the teacher, I'm on the spectrum and this is more challenging. So this is what makes it more helpful to me, and we really tried to teach him to advocate for himself and just say, this is who I am. This is a solution that will help. And, kind of just let them know that he had a tool that he thought would work, and then just basically ask them to be able to use it. And that really seemed to help for him to advocate for himself.
Yeah. Using that toolbox analogy, I think I'm going to, take that away and use that. We kind of have talked about that already, so it won't be like a brand new thing, but just really kind of emphasizing that, I think will be really helpful. And like you said, this is, who your son is, this is who my son is, this is who our kids are. And so they're not going to change. It's just helping them see that, I always think they think bigger. That's how I kind of say.
Yes.
It's like, I say to my son, you think bigger and faster than I do.
Yeah.
So let's talk about why you're doing something. Because 9 out of 10 times he'll be doing something that to me looks crazy. 1, because I'm an adult, and 2, because I have a different brain than him. And once I ask him what he's doing, it's like, okay, I can see where 1 + 10 = 80. I can see that. Yep. Okay.
Yes.
Like, so yeah, it's that. But yeah, having a toolbox, I think, will be a helpful tool.
Yeah. And the things that I found was like when he would come home and like tell me like a success that he had had. And then we would talk about like, well, why do you think it worked out? And he would say, well, I used such and such. And so they start to recognize that they have success internally, like they internalize that, like I get success, or I am, I'm more confident, or I can get better results or whatever when I start choosing which tools to use. And so then it just becomes a part of who they are. And it's really exciting to watch that as they start to be able to kind of verbalize, well, this worked because I was able to do X, Y, Z, and you can definitely see the pride in them as they figure that out themselves as well.
Yeah, that's really cool. I'm excited for that. Yeah. We're not quite there yet.
Right. Yeah. No. Yeah.
I'm excited for that day.
I remember those days.
Yeah.
Almost like this guttural reaction that will just kind of take you right back to what some of those days felt like when you were not there yet. But there is hope. I promise there's definitely hope.
What would you want the world to know about neurodiverse people?
I always say that by far Strayer has been my greatest teacher in life. I would say literally from day one, he really kind of forced me out of my very type A binary, here's my plan, we're going to stick to it kind of way of thinking. And that literally did not work from the day that we brought him home from the hospital. And so, yeah, every step along the way, he's just forced me out of that box. And I know that I am truly a better human because I have got the opportunity to parent him. He has made my world much wider, much more expansive than it would have ever been, because he has forced me to see things from different perspectives and just a different worldview. I mean, they just see and are in the world in such a different way. I mean, but it's beautiful if we will allow ourselves the willingness and the openness to listen and to learn from them, for everybody. But I mean, yeah, the way that they view and interact with the world is so different, I think, than neurotypical, that he has definitely expanded my world in every way imaginable. And I'm so thankful for that, because I feel like I'm a much better human by having been shown a different viewpoint, a different perspective, a different way of viewing the world through his eyes.
Yeah. Yeah, I can totally agree with that. I think it's, I don't know if funny is the right word, but from day one, my son has been that. And I know, I mean, obviously I know being diagnosed does not mean that's when they start being neurodivergent. That's obviously not true. But it's just that how even from day one, he has been different, and he has done things differently from day one.
Yeah.
I mean, I would even say the way he came into the world, he did it completely his own way. But yeah, that idea that, yeah, I would agree with everything you said, that my son's been my biggest teacher and has pushed me and has made me think to myself, why am I doing this so many times? But then there's that joy. He'll come out of school with a sticker or a badge or, something that you're just like, oh yeah, okay, I can hold on to this until the next moment or whatever.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us and for really sharing your experience and kind of all the things you've learned along the way. I know, there's so many things from this. I'm just like looking forward to that day, but also language I can use now.
Yeah.
So thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This has been so much fun to kind of get to just share our journey. So yeah, I loved it. Thank you.
Did you know auditory processing differences mean that some neurodivergent individuals hear all background noises at the same level as a conversation, making it really hard to focus? For some people, their brain doesn't automatically filter out background noises. This means that a conversation happening nearby, the hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of a clock, and the sound of footsteps all compete for the attention at the same level. This can make it difficult to focus in noisy environments like a classroom, workplaces, or restaurants. Many neurodivergent individuals use noise-canceling headphones or prefer quiet places to help them manage the sensory overload. Hey, if you found this episode helpful or think a friend might find it helpful, why not send them a link and let them know why you think they might enjoy it? It might even just be a great way to remind them that hard days don't last forever. Thanks for joining into the conversation, and we'll see you next week.
You know, over time, life can get you down. Discouragement starts to creep in, and eventually we just stop letting ourselves hope for more. We say things like, I'll believe it when I see it, and don't get your hopes up. Sounds like good grown-up advice, right? Actually, it's not. Hey, I'm Christy Wright, #1 national best-selling author, speaker, business coach, and mom of 3. Oh, and I have a podcast called Get Your Hopes Up, which is what I want to tell you about. Romans 15:13 says, "May the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace as you trust in him so that you may overflow with hope by power of the Holy Spirit." And that is exactly what my show is about. Whether I'm telling one of my latest crazy God stories or giving you practical advice to live out your faith, I love hanging out with you every Monday to help you get to know God, get closer to him, and get your hopes up again. Listen to Get Your Hopes Up wherever you get your podcasts, and you can learn more at getyourhopesup.com. That's getyourhopesup.com.
Let's be real, talking about intimacy can be awkward, even with your spouse, but it doesn't have to be. We are Alana, Kyle, and Tira, hosts of the Kingdom Sexuality Podcast, and we're all about keeping it real and helping you add some spice and deeper connection into your marriage, specifically when it comes to what happens in the bedroom.
We don't shy away from the tough conversations that often get missed in Christian circles. With us, you'll get laughs, tips, fresh ideas, and challenges to strengthen your relationship and bring it to the next level.
Because let's face it, navigating intimacy as a Christian can be confusing, and finding safe, wholesome resources can be tough. So, subscribe now on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, and join us each week on the Kingdom Sexuality Podcast.